Hey, are the Gators really that good? They've got a week
Yes.
off. Yeah, I mean, they got a week off now playing the Vols in Thompson Bowling.
They beat Tennessee 2 times. Screw
Yeah.
the Vols, man.
30 points last time. Auburn goes on the road, gets a win at LSU. Ole Miss broke that losing streak, beat Texas last night. Alabama and Mississippi State. Hell of a game, guys. That was a damn good one. Vanderbilt, watch out for the Commodores. Hey, we got
smart kids are good. I told you, if the smart kids get good, we're all screwed.
Chris Lee's going to join us from Southeastern 16. Bryan Matthews, AuburnSports.com. Coach Matt Dean.
Yeah.
This guy is a basketball supercomputer. We're going to cover a lot, man. Take a picture of the QR code with your cellular phone. We'll give you the latest trending topics in the SEC. What is happening? Follow us on X, YouTube, Facebook. Share it. It is
like
not.
Comment.
Hey, like it, love it.
Drag it, twist it.
You want more of it?
Oh no.
That's right. Hey, it is the Thursday edition of SEC Sidelines Sports. Got a great show. Let's get started. Matt, I saw something, and Brendan and I both did the other night. I was watching a basketball game, and I saw a bounce pass. A bounce pass.
They still exist, Rob.
Yeah, they do. All right, Mr. Basketball from Davenport. Let's talk about this SEC race. Yeah. Florida. Franz Beard talked about it. They bring back Hanglotten. That's 5 giants, the land of the giants. That's 25 tall fouls, as Franz calls it. This SEC race, you look at the standings. At the top, Auburn at 7-0, Bama 7-1, Florida, Missouri tied at 5-2, A&M. Buzz Williams. That's one of my favorite coaches I think I've ever seen. I love this guy. He wears the 3-piece suit in honor and respect of the guy that got him his first coaching job. Otherwise, I would think he was the appliance manager at Sears. But Vanderbilt at 4, and by the way, I miss Sears. I really miss Sears. This is the best story ever. Ole Miss 5-3, Vanderbilt 4-3, Kentucky 4-3, and they were in the top 10 last Saturday, and they got the win in Knoxville. Tennessee was number 1 not too long ago. Now they're 4-4. Mississippi State 4-4. Matt, let's get started, man. Where do you want to get started on this SEC race? It's kind of like somebody serving you a big pot of gumbo, and you're from New York and you're down in Lafayette, Louisiana. What's in it?
Good morning, guys. It's always good to be on. I heard something from Jay Billis the other night, and I really think this is a pretty fascinating statement. Jay Billis said, and I'm trying to quote him, winning the SEC tournament may be more difficult than winning the NCAA tournament. And, obviously that's a little bit extreme, but it's not too extreme when you think about the depth of the conference. When you read those teams off, Rob, a couple teams stand out to me for reasons of why they're there. You look at Vanderbilt and Missouri. Let's just talk about Vanderbilt quickly. I mean, they've had some incredible wins, and obviously the league is going to get a lot of teams in the NCAA tournament. Missouri has had some really good wins and has had a much better start than anyone would have anticipated. You mentioned Buzz Williams. Last week, A&M had, I think, a 20-plus point lead in Austin, and Texas comes back, who's 3-5 in the league, comes back at home to beat them in the last seconds. And then last night, Ole Miss hangs on to beat Texas 72-69.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we obviously can't mention everybody on every show, but Alabama's really good too.
Wow.
And the team that could be the best of all, I still believe, is Florida. I think Florida 18-2. Are you kidding me? Rob, you kind of mentioned it off air. Right now, the game this weekend in Knoxville, Tennessee may be a slight favorite. I'm not sure why, but they're at home. Florida dismantled them. Really, when you look at that first Florida-Tennessee game, that's kind of the one that got Tennessee going a little bit of a spiral. They've had a couple wins since then. But a great example is last week, the rock fight between Auburn and Tennessee. And Tennessee had opportunities to possibly close that game out and couldn't. And then they go at home and lose a game to Kentucky, which I think everyone thought they probably would win in Knoxville. So, A lot of great basketball being played. Best basketball conference in the league by far. It's not even close. We want to talk about sometimes when we beat ourselves up, and how will that affect us in NCAA tournament? I'm just telling you, it's so fun to watch right now. It kind of reminds me back in the day when I was younger. Big Ten basketball with Bobby Knight and Johnny Orr and some of those great teams. Oh, the Indiana-Michigan rivalry. It's really dating myself now, but
Judd Heathcote.
Judd Heathcote, phenomenal coach. Man. One of the best in the business, and obviously on the sidelines, he's very filled with emotion. I just think the SEC basketball right now, guys, it's like much needed drama to watch every night. Honestly, you look last night, Ole Miss beats Texas in a close game after having a bigger lead. And then you talk about Auburn and LSU. LSU, we don't even talk about, guys, but they're pretty good. Yeah. They just can't beat many teams in their league, except they beat Arkansas. And Arkansas lost to Florida Saturday. And I think Arkansas 1-7. Aren't they going back to Calipari's going back to Lexington to play Kentucky this week very soon? Yeah. So what a league, guys. What a league. Very fun.
And they'll be glad to see him. And you look, Matt, I mean, look at these standings. I'm saying look at the standings in the SEC right now. What I'm seeing, Florida, Auburn and Florida played in the SEC championship game last year. Florida's got the height. That's where they're a concern to everybody that they face. And they've got athletic height, and they've got a 7'9" guy that's not even playing. Say that again. 7'9".
Yeah.
Guy goes to the big and tall store for sure. Matt, as a coach, Nate Oates benched in the second half Saturday night. Mark Sears out of Muscle Shoals. Great. But you got to do that. You got to, it's not rules for thee, but not for me. He's fair in that. Before we go to Bryan Matthews, your comments on that as a coach.
Well, you coach your roster, and you also coach to how they're playing at the time. And if a head coach, this could be any player that's a star player, a starter, whatever you say. Sometimes if you get in a rhythm with other players on the floor, the last thing you want to do is break that rhythm. Now, I don't know what Oates said in the interview after the game. I'm sure he's managed it pretty well because he manages everything else pretty well, but that's not uncommon, guys. This happens. Sometimes in the sport of basketball, it's just not your night. And that's why we talk about the quality of depth on the bench. If you have someone on the bench that can pick up the starters when they're not having the best of nights, that's why you usually have successful teams, because it's not just 1 through 5, it's 1 through 9 or 10. And I think that's a credit to Bama and them. And I think the player handled it well from what I've heard. I haven't heard otherwise. And I think they move forward. And I'm sure. Now, here's another thing we don't talk about. I'm sure there was a conversation after the game with the coach and player. And he probably said, hey, look, this is not on you. This is my decision. We were going well with this other combination. You're still my guy. I would imagine that was said privately. We don't always disclose those conversations. But I will say this, as a coach, you have to have transparency with your players. If you're used to playing someone 30, 32 minutes and that gets cut in half, let's say, the better coaches are going to go right to that player after the game and say, hey, I hope you understand what we did. This is why I did it. I'm going to need you more next game. Let's go. And I think that happens a lot. And honestly, in the NBA, it's harder sometimes, guys, because you're coaching a bunch of millionaires and egos involved, Sports Center highlights, whatever. I think you can get away with that at the college level a lot more so you can in the NBA level.
Great answer. Let's go to Auburn via Doraville, Georgia. Not too. Is that far from Dawsonville? Awesome Bill from Dawsonville, the great NASCAR rider Bill Elliott. Is that
a little bit? Doraville is a suburb northeast of Atlanta, just right at the 285-85 exchange. So yeah.
I got you. Were you watching on the Color TV last night that Auburn at LSU game? And I know, we have you and Jason on covering Auburn, and God, and Doug Dean, the AU Dose. This regular basketball season, we're talking about, you got Florida with all the height. You got Auburn there at 7-0, Bama at 7-1, Florida at 5-2. Big game Saturday. Break down that Auburn LSU game. What'd you learn from that? other than they find excuses to win?
Well, one of the things I learned is that the bottom of this league, South Carolina, LSU, and even Arkansas, there's some pretty good teams down there. I mean, I've watched South Carolina play 2 or 3 times now, including Auburn. They got really good players. LSU has got really good players. They got athletes. They got a really good guard, and I haven't seen Arkansas play yet, but knowing by their coach and their program, they probably got really good players too. So this is an amazing league, and I think Auburn's very fortunate. Not fortunate, but has done exceptionally well to be in the position they are now. And I think the 3 teams you named, Auburn, Alabama, or Florida, those are the 3 teams, in my opinion, so far, are competing for the top of this league in the SEC regular season championship, and would not be surprised if any of the 3 ended up winning it.
Yeah, and you've got coming up February 8th, the clash of Titans, Auburn and Florida at the Neville. That is going to be crazy. We had one of our interns, Oakley McFerrin, who's a freshman at Auburn, and need to get you hooked up with him if you need somebody to work with you. He's really smart. He's went to MBA, and he was a high school teammate with Marcel Reed at A&M. And Oakley was talking about the Stampede getting into Neville last week. 2 girls were hurt and had to go to the hospital. I didn't know about that, but what they do, people spending the night out there. I can't imagine what it's going to be like. The Tennessee game was big, but the Florida game is, Ali Frazier.
Yeah,
down goes somebody.
Week from Saturday, they probably will be camping out. One of the reasons I think they had the issues last weekend was because they suspended the camping out because of the weather, the low temperatures, and they tried to do something else, and it did not work at all, obviously. But I'm sure they'll get back to something they know that works this upcoming, not this weekend, but the next. But yeah, that's going to be a big one. I think Auburn's fortunate to have Florida at home. We've seen what they've done to some good teams, at their house. So, but that's going to be a battle. That's going to be one of those that you'll look back on and say that was big in the race for the SEC regular season championship.
Because I'm glad Auburn's not going to the O-Dome. I think the last time Auburn won at the O-Dome, FDR was in the White House. But I think
you're right. Yeah, I remember the last trip they went down there. They got run out of the gym.
Yeah,
I definitely remember that. Yeah,
not pretty. Matt Dean, coach, jump in here with Bryan Matthews, AuburnSports.com.
Hey, Bryan, good to see you. I think we saw each other last week on this show.
Yeah, good to see you.
What's really interesting, guys, about basketball, and I was with our head coach on the women's side yesterday talking about league play. We're now about halfway through league play across the country, right? And there are some teams that are off to fantastic starts. And obviously, if you're a Tennessee fan right now, you're a little disappointed because you're 4-4 in the league. And I see Brendan perk up with a smile there. But anyway, the reality of the situation is sometimes you have to go back.
Disappointed in general if you're a Tennessee fan. I just think.
Yeah, well, sometimes
always disappointing.
Sometimes you have to go back in the lab. And what I mean by that as a coach, you have to do a self-scout, a deep dive, and say, okay, what's working, what's not working. And the beauty of it is everything's on tape. So everyone knows what you are to this point so far. So there are going to be some tweaks being made. And in a weird way, guys, teams that had higher expectations and may have lost a couple games here, sometimes that takes the pressure off some of these athletes and they can just go out and play. And the goal may not be to win a regular season SEC championship. It may be to win the conference tournament. It may be to get to the Final Four. So this league has so many teams that can make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. A lot of coaches that should be in the NCAA tournament are kind of refocusing and trying to make a self-scout, a deep dive of how do we get better and make that product the best it can be when we get closer to the conference tournament.
Yeah. Bryan, you're looking at this team. Janai Broome goes out, misses a couple of games, and it's the next man up philosophy. What is it about Bruce Pearl and everybody on that staff? It's different to me. They coach these guys really hard, which I believe in, and the players respond to it in a positive way.
They do. I think Bruce Pearl is one of those coaches that can love them and coach them hard at the same time. He has that personality. He has that way of really connecting with them as soon as they get on campus and through recruiting. So he can do that, and he's done it throughout his career. I agree with Coach 100%. If you look at Auburn, they've obviously had an incredible start this season, 19-1, 11 or 12. I think it's quad 1 wins, But if they don't get better, they're not going to make that deep run into the tournament. And I think Janai Broom's injury was an opportunity for some down the bench players to get more playing time and contribute. And you saw the results of that last night with Jaheim Hudson, who's probably the 8th or 9th guy, right? And had not really played hardly at all. He does get some playing time with Janai out, and then with Janai back last night, and them getting into a little bit of foul trouble. He got in there and got, I think it was 8 or 9 minutes and scored 6 or 8 points and had a couple rebounds. And I think he had a steal, hit a big 3-pointer there in the second half. So that's the thing that Auburn has to do. They have to, while they're competing for this championship, while everybody's telling them how great they are, they've got to find ways to get better, or they're going to get passed by some teams that, in my opinion, have more talent than Auburn. Certainly not the experience and not playing like Auburn is right now, but there are more talented teams out there for sure.
Yeah, and Florida is the team that concerns me the most if I'm Auburn because of the height and athleticism. I think I heard it last night during the broadcast. Auburn is number 1 in the country. We know that, but they also have number 1 in strength of schedule. And the guys on TV were saying that never happens. So that's impressive to say the least. Bryan, let's talk quickly about football. I mean, right now we're kind of in the wilderness right now. Spring practice. Auburn's going to start later than usual. They did pretty well in the portal. I think I saw they're ranked in the top 5 in the portal. A, did they address their needs? And B, do you like the players they're bringing in, starting with Jackson Arnold, the quarterback?
I do. I don't think he's a slam dunk necessarily. I think he's got some work to do, but we saw that potential at Oklahoma, especially the second half of the season when he got back in there. I thought he played pretty well. So we'll see how everything fits him. But I think the most important thing that Auburn did in the portal was go out there and strengthen their offensive tackle positions and continue to strengthen some other positions, throughout the defense and at receiver to give, especially offensively, Jackson Arnold the opportunity to come in and be a part of a quality offense with good players all around him. I'm not sure that Peyton Thorne had that necessarily his 2 years at Auburn. I think Auburn really struggled with his offensive line, particularly at offensive tackle. So that's an area that I think Auburn did a great job upgrading. I would say the 35 guys they brought in, really talented folks, are going to impact the roster right away, the signing class and the transfer portal. This is the best they've done in the portal over the past several seasons with Will Redmond coming in. So I give him a lot of credit for that.
All right, you're saying 35 players. I think they've got, 17 they brought in the portal, and then the recruiting class on top of that. Are most of the guys from the December signing period class that was, I think, ranked 6th in the country already on campus, Bryan?
I think it was 20 of the 24 signees and 14 of 15 transfers. Or no, 21 of 25 signees and 14 of 15 transfers. Yeah, that's it. So, most of the signees are here. The only ones that aren't are a couple offensive linemen and the 2 Smith brothers, the 2 receivers they signed from Selma. Yeah. But they'll all be here in May. And then the quarterback from Stanford, Ashton Daniels, he's graduating from Stanford after, I think, 3 years in May. So he'll be here after that too. So
he'll be running the film or the tape room.
Yeah, doing whatever
3
he
years,
wants.
the degree from Stanford.
Yeah, I think that's right. Don't quote. Don't. Yeah,
I'm going to quote you.
All right.
I believe you, because if you said it, it's got to be true, because you got a .com by your name.
I read it on the internet, so it must be true.
That's right. Absolutely. I think everybody wants to know, when was the last time, this is a great one, when was the last time you had a lead story, blank is academically ineligible for the coming season? Does that ever happen anymore?
Not very often, no. When it comes to schools and athletes they have, that's kind of, a lot of schools like Auburn have certain majors they put them in. That's still an issue, right? Still goes on. It hasn't gone away. And they have a really good, strong academic support system too.
They have enough money now to pay to get the grades done, so they don't have to worry. What do you guys mean, Rob? Oh God, Lord, follow the money, son.
Oh, I am. I
got a Hellcat and I got a test tomorrow and a paper due. Oh, I guess got some flash cash of like $1,000. I was going to go walk around the computer lab and find somebody who wants to give it to me.
How do you think I graduated? Come on, guys.
Hey, I'm telling you, I remember quite well being in school at Auburn, and Freddie Wagan was in one of my classes. I saw him the first day and the last couple of days of the class. I don't know what Freddie got his degree in, but man, we had a teacher, Dr. George Plaskidas, who was an All-American football player in 76 and 77 at Ole Miss, and he said, "Look, I know all the tricks. Don't come whining to me at the end of the quarter, begging me and bringing some coach or somebody saying, you got to be eligible. If you're not in my class, I'll fail your ass." End of discussion. And Kevin Green's wife sat next to me.
If you ain't eligible now, you're real dumb.
Yeah. I will say the only place I hear that affecting issues is at the transfer portal. And that's often just guys who their credits aren't going to transfer over to Auburn because they're in a major that Auburn doesn't have, or it just doesn't work out. That's the only place that academics has really come up in what I cover over the last several years.
Yeah. Matt?
Well, we're in the era where student athletes are a protected class. I mean, let's be honest, with the NIL, the portal, the money involved. Brendan said it. I mean, there are ways around this. And obviously there's a lot more online opportunities as well, which means it's just, I hate to say it, it's no longer amateur sports. I mean, it's not. And we still going to love our school. We're going to watch our school play. We're going to rep our school, and we're going to fight like heck for our school. But these are different times. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I work at a Division III school where, you need to be really good in your studies, because that's going to be your career is what your field of study. But these student athletes are trained to be professionals, and they're just trying to make do, Rob.
Yeah.
So that's what's impressive about the quarterback from Stanford. Yeah. If you Stanford doesn't play around. If you graduate from Stanford in 3 years, you're working your tail off.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no question you are. Bryan, let's kind of play ping pong here on some stuff. The SEC right now, our manhood has been challenged. 2 straight years, we've shared the national championship. We've loaned it out to Michigan and Ohio State. But that's a top-heavy league. And Matt's an Iowa guy growing up in the Quad Cities, Davenport. If they ever had an offense to go with those Kirk Ferentz defenses, I would be really good. But if could you imagine having to play Iowa in mid-September, late September in Iowa City at Neil Kinnick Stadium? Is it Neil Kinnick?
Niall Kinnick.
Niall, that's what I thought. It is Niall. Okay, Niall.
Heisman Trophy winner for the Iowa Hawkeyes back in the 40s, I believe.
And he was a legend. I mean, and I believe he was killed in World War II.
Yeah, he was
absolutely. He was an aviator, and great. I mean, those fans up there. Bryan, would you be in favor of a true road games instead of these so-called neutral sites? Say Auburn goes to Iowa City, Ohio State goes to the Swamp in mid-September for an 11 a.m. steam bath. Would you like that?
Oh, I hate games in the big cities and in the big domes or whatever. I can't stand them. I would much rather have the experience of going to another town, another college town, and their home atmosphere. I think that's the case for the regular season. I think that's definitely the case for the postseason. Definitely would like to see the playoffs have more home games up until maybe even the finals if I was the guy in charge, so to speak. So I'm 100% behind that.
Matt?
Yeah, 100%. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. Didn't Auburn and Penn State have a home and home a few years ago?
Don't remind me.
Well, I didn't really talk about the result, but I think the atmosphere is just outstanding. And obviously, I think were they both night games or were they day games? Because
one night game was there, day game was in Auburn.
Yeah, you got the short end of that straw, because the whiteout at Penn State in the evening is one of the toughest environments in college football. There's no doubt about that. And Bryan, my son works for Oregon football, so this year Oregon has to go to Penn State, and I'm kind of hoping for Oregon's fate that it's not a night game, but I'm sure it will be. So it would be a great experience. But it's about the experience too, and not just for the the fans, but it's also the student athletes. They love to play in that atmosphere. I mean, that's why they do this. And the thing about Iowa City, if you go to Kinnick Stadium in a night game, it only seats about 72,000, but they're right on top of you. And it's really a phenomenal atmosphere. And they have that tradition after the first quarter where they wave to the young kids in the hospital, Iowa City Medical Hospital. So I really wish we had more of that, but the money's in all these neutral site venues, and unfortunately, I don't think that's going away either. I love the thought process, though, Rob. I would love to see Ohio State come to the Swamp. By the way, I think get their butt kicked.
Well, I think it would be fun, Bryan. Another one for you: night games. Auburn had one night game last year. That was the 4 overtime. I was there against Texas A&M. I know TV pays all this money, but man, there's nothing like night football in the South. What do you call it? Saturday Night Lights. SEC Network did a great documentary, and I don't think they showed anything from Jordan-Hare Stadium, which is magic at night for sure.
It is, and I think that just Auburn needs to be better. If they want more night games, get better, and you'll be in those prime positions, whether it's afternoon game or night. So I just think that has to do with it, right? Auburn has 4 consecutive losing seasons. This is who they are right now. It's not who they want to be. And maybe this is the year they are better and they do get some more of those night games.
Yeah, I've deemed the 11 a.m. game as the timeout game, having raised 3 kids. That's what it is, and you get stuck in that 11 a.m. The 4 o'clock start. Old games used to start at 1 o'clock.
Yes,
Bryan, what's trending down in Auburn that you're covering on your website, auburnsports.com? You work round the clock. There are no days off. That's just how it is being a beat writer. I call it
is
like a beat writer. You know what I'm saying? Because you're on the beat
That's
all the time.
That's right. We're actually about to get into the busiest time of the year, right? We got basketball going on, and as basketball hits its stretch run going into February, March, you'll start spring practice in football. Baseball gets going, which is really my favorite thing to cover at Auburn, especially when everything else is over and it's just baseball. Love to do that, get out Plainsman Park. So, and then recruiting. This is a big time for recruiting. The coaches have been out on the road. They had their first junior day last weekend, which we have a ton of coverage of. A bunch of great prospects came in. As good a junior day as I've seen. And just keep on rolling, right? So all that and more at auburnsports.com. And, Monday Musings, I want to mention, sponsored by Uncle Keith's Delicious Red Sauce, available at Publix, Piggly Wiggly, Renfro statewide. It's delicious salsa. Give it a try.
All right, what about people in Florida and Tennessee and Mississippi and Georgia? If they want to get some of it, how do they get it?
They may find that those 2 places they can order online and use BMAT15 for 15% off your online order.
Hell yeah. Look, you going to be in Oxford Saturday?
No, I am not traveling to Oxford. I'll be here doing some other stuff with baseball, but we will have full coverage of the game Saturday, and of course I'll be watching.
What do you think is going to happen?
I think Auburn might pick up the first L, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. The road is a tough place in the SEC. I think Ole Miss is going to have a great atmosphere. That place, I believe I saw yesterday, was already sold out. So I don't think there'd be quite as many as those Auburn witnesses that Coach Pearl likes to talk about on the road. There'll be some there, of course.
Yeah.
But I think Ole Miss, is a pretty good team at home. They've got guys who can shoot the lights out. So this is going to be another war. And at some point, Auburn's going to play a game where they're not at their best and they don't find a way to win, right? So we'll see if this is it or not. Maybe they just go 18-0 or whatever it is. I don't know, but I just find that to be pretty much impossible and as strong as this league is this year.
Hey, well, they're 7-0. You can't get there until you go 8-0. That's one chapter. Right. Hey, Bryan, thank you so much for checking in with us today, and look forward to having you back on here soon. Chris Lee, I'm going to have him come on here in just a moment from Southeastern 16. Matt, man, I think this SEC basketball race, the higher you climb on that ladder, you call it a wall of worry or whatever, somebody is out there is going to get you probably when you least expect it. How prepared can you be? I mean, that's a question. Let me say something real quick about Winter Timber Outdoors, folks. Proud to have them as a sponsor. They are open every day of the week. All right, in Athens, Alabama, but they're growing all over the Southeastern Conference footprint. Check it out, Winter Timber Outdoors. Again, all the rifles, shotguns, handguns, over 2,000 in stock in the store. If you participate in shooting sports, duck hunting, deer hunting, turkey hunting, that's coming up. They've got you covered. All the gear, Sitka, Dixie decoys. I have not been in a sporting goods store that's this nice. It's really, really an impressive store, and they've got a great staff. Proud to have them as a sponsor. Look forward to growing in the SEC with Winter Timber Outdoors. Matt, before we go to Chris, talk about a trend that you see happening in college basketball in the SEC with all these teams that are this strong. What is it that makes you think we can continue to grow like this? And what is the biggest threat to SEC basketball growth?
Well, I just think basketball, if you look at the last several years, and we've talked about
Matt,
and we've talked about the portal. Hello?
Yeah. You there?
Yeah. Well, someone said, "Did you say you lost me, or am I?"
Yeah, you were there, and then you froze, and now you're back. But
must be my internet. I apologize, but I just think it's easier to buy a roster of 5 to 7 really studs in a basketball arena and keep them there than it is maybe a football roster per se. So I just think with the coaching and the talent level in the SEC, I think you're going to see the best conference in the country for years to come. I think the coaching is so elite. I even look at what Vanderbilt has done from an upgrade standpoint. I look at what Missouri's done. We kind of get consumed with some of the natural names, but I mean, Bruce Pearl, you mentioned him earlier. The thing that's great about Bruce, think about this combination.
It's a good look.
Rarely do you get a coach that can recruit at the level.
Well, we're losing you there. Maybe dial back in with this, Matt. Well, let's see if Matt can dial back in with us. Just so that Chris Lee just came in on cue. Hey, Chris Lee, how are you, sir?
Chris is with us right now up in Nashville. Chris Lee, Southeastern 16.
Hey, gentlemen, good morning.
Hey, love that logo in the background.
The SEC pennant display?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. 16. That is cool. Nothing really to talk about other than
being sick and sneezing. Hi, Chris.
No, just sneezing. I'm laughing about something.
Basketball.
SEC basketball race, Chris. I mean, there's 16, and everybody's worth covering this year.
Yeah, I mean, you've got 3 teams that aren't going to make the tournament: South Carolina, LSU, and Arkansas. Other than that, you've got 13 teams in the mix. I think they're all pretty good. I don't think all 13 are going to make it, but 11 or 12 might. You've got elite teams at the top. It is the best the league has ever been, in my opinion, top to bottom, and I don't think I'm far from alone on that.
Well, we talk about it. Coach Matt Dean is on with us right now. We just had Bryan Matthews from auburnsports.com talking about the competitiveness of the race. Talk about Vanderbilt. You cover that program. Their new coach came from Virginia Tech. Are they getting something good is happening at Vanderbilt with this basketball program? Memorial Gymnasium is a magical atmosphere. We all know that. They'd never had a losing season until Bryce Drew came in there. And I thought, like a lot of people, he'd be a hell of a coach, having played at Valparaiso. He's got the great pedigree and all, but it didn't work out. But kind of lay the groundwork for why Vanderbilt has got this sudden, surge. They beat Kentucky last weekend. That was huge. That's 2 top 10 wins for Vandy.
Yeah, I think everything starts with, does the guy who runs the program know what he's doing? And I just don't think Jerry Stackhouse was ever a good hire from them. I thought that Mark Byington was a really good hire based on what I had heard about him and his industry reputation, based on what he had done at other places. I know he had not put together a huge string of tourney teams and that kind of thing, but he'd coached at James Madison and at Georgia Southern, which are not exactly two hotbeds of basketball. You looked at what he had done compared to his predecessors, and Mark Byington had done a good job. It was said that he would have a fun style to play for, which makes recruiting easier. Now, look, I did not think, especially at a place like Vanderbilt, where transfers are not easy to get in, that he could flip it this quickly. Rob, the more I watch them, they're legit. I mean, I don't know that this is a team that's exceptionally great at anything, but they're good at a lot of stuff. And they're defending. They're getting steals. They're turning them into easy baskets. They're fun to watch. He's got a kid in Jason Edwards who's tough for just about anybody to stop. He's got Tyler Nickel from Virginia Tech, who's really starting to fill it up from the outside, which they lack. They've got two guys inside, and Jalen Carey and Devin McLaughlin, who are undersized, but they're holding their own in the paint. He's got a deep team. He's got a fun team to watch. They're well prepared, and they can beat just about anybody on any given night. Like even the Alabama game, which was a 16-point loss, they had a fighting shot in the last 3 minutes, and it was a long shot, but they were within 10. It's amazing how competitive he has had them night in and night out.
Yeah, and they're 16-4, 4-3 in the league. So Matt Dean is back with us, and Matt, we're talking about Vanderbilt's sudden that they are. I mean, look at their record: 16-4, 4-3 in the SEC compared to Jerry Stackhouse. And Jerry Stackhouse, yeah, you're right. It was like he'd been in the once you've been in the NBA and you're making $800 or $1 million as an assistant coach, and you go to college and they pay you what they pay you. I don't think they like to recruit like, they get comfortable with that NBA style. But Matt, your thoughts on Vanderbilt, what they're doing with first-year coach from Virginia Tech?
I think it's maybe the best story in college basketball this year. I mean, there's a lot of games to be played, right? We have a second half of the conference season, but you can arguably say right now, I don't know what preseason rankings were, Chris, but they couldn't have been expectations for some of the wins they've had. And they obviously look like a solid team going for the NCAA tournament. They're a tough out every night. And honestly, they're really fun to watch.
Yeah. Matt has frozen again, but Chris,
the win they had,
what Matt said.
Yeah, they were picked SEC's media projections. I did not agree with that. I thought they were better. I didn't know that they were a lot better. I thought they were a team that a lot of years on paper could have an NCAA tournament argument. I thought that they were really old. I do some number crunching every year, and I look at how many minutes you played at Division I schools the year before. Vanderbilt had the second highest number of minutes played at D1 schools of any team in the conference, save Ole Miss. And that's usually a pretty good recipe. That's what worked for South Carolina 2 years ago. Everyone had picked Carolina last, but they had more guys who had played more minutes than anybody in the league the year before, and that translated. I felt like that had a chance to translate for them. The problem is this league is just a dog-eat-dog league. Like even games like LSU, which Auburn found out last night, that was not an easy win for Auburn. No. On the scoreboard, it was probably a little bit more lopsided than it played out when you watched it. And I think that's something that not a lot of people talk about as much, is like even the teams that are out there that aren't going to make the tournament, the South Carolinas, the LSUs, they can give you a fight night in and night out. We were having this conversation on my staff, and if you put LSU in the ACC right now, where they finish? And one of my guys said, probably fifth. They're probably going to be 15th or 14th in the SEC. And I think even the easy games are not easy.
Yeah. Well, I think SEC basketball is starting to trend similarly to SEC baseball. That's what it reminds me the most of. Football, while it's great, this past year it certainly wasn't elite. So the basketball story, and I'm with Matt, and you go from Vanderbilt just was in a funk. I mean, Kevin Stallings was there a long time. Stackhouse wasn't going to work. But talk about the new coach. What's his philosophy on recruiting and taking advantage of the talent that's in Nashville, in Memphis, and within a 250-mile radius?
They want to be fast. They want to play a fun style. They want to give kids a green light. Those are things that are very attractive to players in recruiting. He went transfer heavy this year because Stackhouse left him almost nothing. Now, the one piece he did leave him was a kid named Tyler Tanner from Brentwood Academy, who was Mr. Basketball. He was not a highly sought recruit. He has been an amazing piece of their depth. He went, I think, over 300 minutes as a collegian, and he's a guard before he turned the ball over, which is incredible. He's turned the ball over twice all season. He's over 30 in steals and over 30 in assists. You don't see guys do that, and especially not freshmen. So he pieced together a lot of guys. Jason Edwards is a smaller guard, but he's a headache for anybody to guard. He's one of these guys that gets in the lane, and they list him at 6'1". I'm not sure he's that. He's just cat quick, and he can get off shots from different angles. You throw in a couple of guys who can shoot. You throw in A.J. Hogard, who's from Michigan State, who was a starter there for a couple of years. You just have a lot of pieces on a given night, and I think they'd like to be bigger than they are, Rob. They have a kid named Kajani Wright. He was a McDonald's All-American at Southern Cal. I don't think he was as good as the hype out of high school, but he's not going to play a minute for them this year because of a health situation. That would have helped them where they really need it, but I think the fast pace that – I mean, you look at their roster, and we've joked about.
Yeah. Well, with the roster for Vanderbilt, I mean, you mentioned it, how heavy you are in the transfer portal.
That he may.
Yeah. Chris, out beyond basketball, let's look at some football news going on. Are we the SEC again for the last 2 years? Michigan and then Ohio State, a hated pair of rivals, have swapped the national championship. There are people that are saying the SEC's day of dominance, the era of dominance is over. I don't agree with that, but it's going to cost you if you're going to maintain that elite status. How deep are people willing to dig at Vanderbilt and around the SEC? You cover the whole league to keep this thing going, because there are only so many years you can keep going back, shaking the cup to your donors. Belmead only has so many people. Franklin only has so many people. Mountain Brook only has so many people you can beat on for money. And if you're not winning the championship, eventually they're going to say, look, I'm going to go ahead and buy that lake house down at Lake Martin instead.
Yeah. By the way, apologies. I'm having some connection issues on my end this morning, so hopefully they're not making it too difficult on yours.
No, it's all right. It seems to be affecting a certain part of the country right now, actually.
Yeah.
So, it's not just you, my friend.
We lost Matt. The Yeti got him.
Yeah.
I've already everything's the router once today. So
yeah. I've done it 3 times. Yeah.
Gosh. Well, I already know of at least 3, and I know there's supposed to be some separation between collectives and the schools. In reality, that's not always the way it plays out. I already know of 3 schools in the league that have taken out loans to meet payroll obligations there. That tells you, I mean, that's a pretty good indicator right there. I think what you said, number 2, people get tired of being asked for money. Now, look, if it goes, let's take Vanderbilt, okay? Goes well for you. You're winning in a spot where nobody expected it. That's an easier ask. But I wondered about Lane Kiffin, and I guess it's gone well for him there. But they went all in and said, we expect to get to the playoff. They didn't. How do you make that ask year after year? If you're Kalen DeBoer, Alabama, when you're disappointed, how do you do that? If you're Hugh Freeze, where it's not gone according to plan. I mean, they've got to get some kind of a structure. And here's the problem that I see it. You've got an NCAA that is just living in an alternate reality, which has always been the case. But you need some sort of structure, some sort of I don't know how to phrase this, player representation and organization that they can agree to, and some kind of reality check from the NCAA. And it can't be this, the Title IX thing is, they screws it up, right? Because you're mixing that in there, but that's not square. I mean, people don't tune in to watch women's basketball the way they do the men. And I know I'm going all over the place. I don't mean to, but it's just kind of a mess that is all over the place. And I don't even know where to start with all of it.
Yeah. Well, it starts with women's basketball. You need more women to watch it. I think that's a problem, is they don't really support the basketball, and the men support men's basketball. It's a tough draw. Let's break down something. You cover all 16 of the teams in the SEC. And if there's stories at any of these schools that you think are big, let's talk about them. But before we do that, I want to say the numbers on the national championship game this year, down over 3 million from the previous year. We're pushing it further and later into January. We already see in 2026, I think it's going to be January 26th or 27th in Las Vegas. Are we going to need to start the season earlier, or what's your solution?
I don't think you can start the season earlier. I mean, it's so blasted hot, Rob.
I know.
I mean, I don't know what I'll tell you what I think part of the solution is. You need more good on good games. And the problem is the playoff committee just de-incentivized all that with the way it picked the teams.
Yeah.
Because if you were, and look, the Big Ten ended up being a really good league, right? I mean, Ohio State won the whole thing. Penn State was obviously a quality team. So I'm not knocking the Big Ten, but the Big Ten is constructed different than the SEC. Outside of maybe Michigan is that fifth team that didn't make the playoff, the games weren't that competitive week to week. Meanwhile, in the SEC, you had Kentucky could knock off Ole Miss, Vanderbilt could knock off Alabama, and maybe that said something about the top end of the SEC not being as strong as we thought. But maybe it also says something about the middle and the bottom of the league. And when these games in the Big Ten are laughers, and a lot of these SEC games week to week now are competitive no matter who, because everybody is investing in the program. What the committee did was it just said, we're looking at the number to the right of the dash. If you lost 3 games, forget it. You're not getting in unless you won the conference championship. And if the focus is going to be on the number of games you lose and not going to be on the quality of the teams you beat, what's going to happen is these games where Alabama plays Furman and Kentucky's playing Eastern Kentucky and Ball State and whoever else, there's no incentive to take those off the schedule. What am I getting at? I don't think you know who is legitimately good till you see a lot of good on good. And I don't know that you can really tinker with the calendar. Again, I don't think you can start it earlier. I don't think you can run it much later than mid-January, mid-February. But that's how it goes yet.
Wow.
But I think if you can engineer more good on good games during the regular season, maybe it helps us sort out getting incentives that the committee just put in front of everybody is not to play tough games. It's to win as many games as possible, which incentivizes you to play bad teams.
Yeah, gotcha. And I think that, look, the TV people, it's all about money. They don't really give a damn about the fans out there, because the game experience is tough. If you've got the 8 p.m. Central game at Tuscaloosa or Auburn, for example, and you live in Mobile or Pensacola on the Gulf Coast, you're getting back about 5 o'clock Sunday morning. I mean, after traffic, getting out of there, that makes for a rough Sunday. And if you've got 3 or 4 young kids, that is it can be a nightmare. You're going on no sleep. It's like me coming home when my kids were little after duck hunting all weekend. My wife would say, I'm going to go run some errands. Don't fall asleep. And I'd come back, 3 kids running around in diapers all over the place. It's tough.
Yeah.
So I agree. You start in August, it's way too hot. It's already hot enough in September. So
yeah,
for interest of fans, you lose 3 million people. a lot of people will watch Notre Dame because they hate them. And I think there's a similar number of people out there, maybe not as many, that hate Ohio State that badly. So maybe you had two fan bases or two schools in there that too many people also can't even stand to watch. That could have been it as well. If you had an SEC school, and people were criticizing me when Notre Dame was playing Georgia in New Orleans, and I asked a lot of my Louisiana people that cover LSU for us, well, just the average Catholic resident in Louisiana, especially if they're an LSU fan, would they pull for Georgia versus Notre Dame? And my consensus answer was, in New Orleans, no. In Baton Rouge, yes, they will pull for the SEC. But it's one thing this conference has is a huge consensus block vote. You get an SEC school in, and I'm not looking at the numbers now. Brendan, I'm sure, knows them. But when Georgia and Alabama played in 2017, and in 2021 they played again, and in 2011 LSU and Alabama, do those numbers fall because people go, well, we're SEC fatigue? So kind of maybe Brendan jump in or Chris, whoever.
See, I think maybe SEC fatigue is the thing. Sometimes I think when you hate a team, you might tune in to watch to see it get beat more so than you tune in against a team you just don't care about. I mean, let's throw Texas. Let's say Texas Tech makes the title game. Nobody has strong opinions on Texas Tech outside of, a few schools in that conference. My point is, I don't think it was the people hated Ohio State and Notre Dame. I think it's you didn't have the SEC because this is the most passionate area of the country for college football. Correct. You don't see that in New York and Pennsylvania. And I think you pick up numbers in this area where you don't pick them up. My guess is if you started digging into the footprint of where the viewers were, you lost some people in the Southeastern footprint because they didn't have a team in the fight at the end.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But I didn't want to prejudice your answer by saying that. But I just think the South. I mean, 23 million people in Florida, close to 12 million in Georgia. Maybe 5 in South Carolina, a little over 5 in Alabama, 5 in Louisiana. You got Tennessee's got what, 8 million now? 4 million in Nashville. It seems like it. I mean, so you look at Arkansas is less than 3, Mississippi's less than 3, Texas 30 million plus that we know of. So you're getting some big TV markets: Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth. Atlanta. That's what I think. They better be careful about wishing the SEC to go away, because this kind of stuff that happened this year will happen again. The SEC collectively will pull for the league, the fan bases. But Arkansas fans, they hate Texas so bad. I live in Memphis, in Arkansas. They would rather watch the bars on the old TV screen when it went off at midnight.
Well, and look, we had Garth Glissman, who's basically runs basketball for the SEC, on our podcast, and he was terrific, by the way. And he brought up some things like that are that I think point to the staying power of the SEC. And he basically said this. He said, look, where's everybody moving? They're moving here. They're moving to the South. Yeah. The weather is warm.
Correct.
You have no income taxes in some states. They're governed better. Like, this is not going away. I know people probably want to think, well, the SEC hasn't had a title winner in a couple of years. And, hey, the Big Ten's well run and got its stuff together. And they put some resources into football too. And their traditional powers are back. Ohio State and Michigan have won the last 2, but because you've got a lot of economic factors that are incentivizing things for people to be here in this area of the country where we already are crazy about college football to begin with.
Yeah, and look, we'll wrap it up and let you get going. I know you got a big day, but that's what I think. The lack of state income tax, population. I've never known anyone in the South that said, hey, I want to move up to New England or to the Rust Belt. It just doesn't happen. It just means more to live in the Southeastern Conference. Chris, let's do this again next week, man. I was sitting there going, wow, we haven't had Chris on. Brendan reminded me, and I'm like, you should be on every week if you can. I know you're busy, but you are one of the absolute best. Let people know how they can follow you.
Well, and just, basketball is the biggest brand on our channel right now. We're getting massive views for that. We cover it wall to wall. There's 3 of us that stay up and watch pretty much every SEC game that's on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. So go to Southeastern 16, just search us on YouTube. You'll find us. We're just getting hundreds of thousands of views a month on our basketball content. We're doing live streams. We're doing watch-alongs. Check us out at Southeastern 16. Oh, by the way, getting ready for baseball. We're going to be interviewing Alabama coach Rob Vaughn here in about an hour. We're going to be interviewing Butch Thompson at Auburn tomorrow, Skip Johnson at Oklahoma tomorrow. So we're getting right into baseball too. And by the way, we've got a football live stream at 11. So yeah.
Hey, not shabby. I love that, man. All right. Well, Chris, let's definitely do it next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob.
All right. Brendan, let's say something about sponsors. We've got great ones like Landers, Ford, Memphis.com. They are open every day of the week. Now, look, if you are in the market for a new car, truck, or SUV, or a pre-owned one, start with Landers. Ask for Brad Bellamy, the general manager, our great friend. We love him. He'll help you out. Kenny Myers is also out there. Y'all all know him in the Mid-South. He is a CBHS alum, one of the best out there. Their service department will pick you up and take you back and forth on the service. There's all kind of opportunities to save big on Broncos, Expeditions, the Ford F-150s, which is what I drive. They are great trucks. Drive like a car, perform like a truck. Can't beat it. And $500 off for SEC Sidelines audience members. Also, Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company is located right down Poplar Avenue on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Great people out there, Charles Hall and the team. They got everything imaginable, over 7,000 pairs of boots. I'll tell you what, when you go in there, just look at all the great clothes, the duck heads, the button downs, the Filson, the Barber, and the incredible selection of boots, over 7,000 pairs, I said. And great looking men's and women's clothing, dresses, these purses. They've got kids' boots. You'll love this place. It's a great place to visit. Charles Hall, his wife Laura, J.M. Huffman, Raven, Squidward, Lydia, everybody out there, they know what they're talking about, and they'll recommend and put you in the best boots and clothes, jackets. You cannot beat it, man. STS, I love their stuff. All of them. Hey, great show today, everybody. For executive producer Brendan Martin, navigating us through some internet issues in the Southeast today, but we made it through. We'll be back on tomorrow. Everybody have a great day. Most often, see the face of Christ, at least among us. God bless America. Thanks for watching.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shopp's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.